You are now listening to Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell, the voice for the people. Join Richie alongside co-host property damage attorney Hans Kennon as they bring light to the taboo world of big insurance companies, exposing their tactics and fighting for justice. Hear stories from contractors across the state. Contractor Talk, here to protect homeowners and uncover the truth.
All right, welcome to the show, Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell. Now, every Monday night here on 94.9 FM, 950 on the AM dial, live in Central Florida, is Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We record it live on air. Then you have a second shot at it. If you're hearing just a piece of it later on, then if you want to hear the whole thing, read some background on it. Find us on Spotify, on iTunes, and if you want to see Hans' dapper suit of the week, I beg you to try this out. Go to our YouTube page, Contractor Talk Podcast, and you'll be able to find us. Like us, subscribe us there, watch every show, and go to contractortalkpodcast.com. Everything is there, is available. Streaming, everything, links to everything is there on our website. We are sponsored by the Restoration Association of Florida. We're happy to be here for this show and every show. What's going on, Hans? How you been, man?
Good. Everything's fine. I'm a little subdued tonight because our guest actually is wearing a sport coat that I believe is cooler than one I have on today.
Oh my goodness.
I have one that's very similar though, but we were actually talking talking fashion stuff out in the hallway there, and I was like, no one ever gives me a run for my money in shoes or jackets, but our guest tonight absolutely has done so.
Oh my goodness! And somebody that's showing you up. This is a great show. This is a great show for, or giving you a run for your money, rather.
One-uppers, baby.
Yeah. Then,
can you mind if I jump in on this?
Yeah. So let's
said about me. I'm just come on. So all I got to say is, Hans, if I had your face, I wouldn't have to dress like this. Right? I have to work from the neck down, right, to get anybody's attention. So, but I appreciate the compliments on my clothes.
No, absolutely.
All right. So if you're wondering who that is, we have Duke Mills, president of Work Comp Solutions, and we connected just recently about some stuff that I'll let you explain. You'll do a much better job than I will. Sure. But the background on the show is we have guests every week that is in the restoration environment, the world. Insurance, we talk about the legislature as it relates to law changes here in the state of Florida regarding contractors, as we are a 501c6 nonprofit association, the Restoration Association of Florida is. And we are by contractors, for contractors, and consumers alike, because contractors only as good as the consumer rights here in the state of Florida. So if you are listening and you're interested in becoming a referral partner or a contractor within our network, find us online at raflorida.org. And then today we bring a much different spin of a guest today. We do get into some legal stuff. Mm-hmm. Hans being a board certified attorney for, I'll let him tell you how many years, 20 plus years in this space, and insurance, that kind of thing. So whether it be property, whether it be auto, you do all kinds of insurance dispute resolution. Isn't that right?
We do. We always have, and even though there's been some changes to the statute that honestly make it less lucrative for us, we're still here to help the consumer.
That's right. Isn't something like less than 1% of attorneys are board certified?
Actually, less than 3% are, and which is still, there's 110,000 lawyers in the state of Florida.
Holy crap!
Only 3% are board certified in any specialty, and there's about 20 specialties. Mine is civil trial law, taking cases to court and going in front of a jury and trying to get some justice.
It's awesome for the people. Justice for the people. Anyways, but that's great, man. And so today we have Duke here. I'll let you explain what we got going on today.
Okay, Richie. Well, first, I'm really glad that I hooked up with you.
Me too.
And the reason is so I'll give you a little background on what happened and why I reached out to Richie. So I own a company called Work Comp Solutions. We're in Lakeland, Florida. And for years and years, we only did workers' comp, right? Mm. So those were our clients. And probably the last 3 or 4 years, we started doing other lines of coverage, right? So with all that being said, really means not really relevant to what we're talking about. But NCCI, that is the governance to employee classifications for workers' compensation, and they also set the rates.
Gotcha. Like occupational codes for each industry.
They call them, yeah, exactly. They call them class codes, right? So if you're a plumber, there's a class code for that. If you're doing remediation, typically you're a janitorial code, right? So if you got carpenters, you know, all of those codes go in there. So back in and look, this is my speculation, that the Department of Insurance and NCCI don't like each other. Now, this is probably, after I make this statement, I'm probably going to have to get my wife to crank my car for the next 30 days just in case somebody comes looking for me. But
This guy thinks so highly of her.
this is... so
Try my food, honey.
yeah, exactly. That's what it's going to be, right? So, and the reason I say that is if you've contractors watched over the years, when NCCI says we're going to roll the rates back 3%, right? So the rates have rolled back 70+% in the last 20 years. And when NCCI says we're going to roll the rates back 2%, 3%, the Department of Insurance says, no, you're going to roll them back 6% or 8%. So they always win. And so, in my opinion, because NCCI really is...
is the N for national? Is that, or are they...
NCCI is in 44 states, right?
Okay.
So now, the OIR, Office of Insurance and Regulation, said, from now on, whatever changes you're going to make, nothing to do with rates. If you're going to introduce a new classification, employee classification, or if you're going to change an existing classification, we want a task force put together, right? So in essence, OIR has said, we want Duke to look at it first and give his opinion. So I actually wasn't their first choice. It was one of the largest workers' comp carriers in the Southeast called Summit. They're out of Lakeland, the Bridgefield.
I paid them lots of money before.
Okay, so you know exactly who they are.
Okay.
Well, they reached out to to Eric Jones, who was head of auditing. So this guy gets it, right? And so Eric Jones said, you don't want me, which I appreciate that he said that, because he's going to be slanted toward, carrier choices.
I remember what you were saying. On the board, they actually require board members to be in this industry, right?
Yeah, but I'm not on the board. This is a task force specifically for introduction of class codes or changes. Okay, right? So anyway, so this is all of about 6 weeks ago. They send me these classifications to review, right? So we're talking about it. And some of them, I don't even care, right? You got a new code, drone manufacturing. I don't care, right? So that comes up. So I don't know. Paper shredding. It doesn't interest me.
It's been around for a while.
Yeah, but now there's a class code for it, right? So...
Right.
Now, it's one thing, it's really about people are in the mold remediation business. They're going to take the employees that do that who are currently in a janitorial classification, which is inexpensive, right? And they're going to move them into asbestos abatement code, which is 3 to 4 times higher. So before we have this conference call, so this is a Teams call, right? So we're looking at each other. And so I go, look, there's no way. That's not going to work.
Nobody asked a question. It's like, whose idea was this?
Well,
the first thing I would say.
They never had to do it until now.
I don't get where the pressure is coming from. So, I mean, I would imagine, as Hans and I both know, the insurance company plays a long pressure game, has the obscene amount of money to be able to and influence to press their agenda.
This is insurance companies, right?
Sure.
NCCI, this is all work comp, right? So there may be issues where, from a liability standpoint, that they push, right? But this is strictly about now moving your employees, if you're in the remediation business, to a rate that's triple. Based on, Richie, what? That's what I said,
what's
right?
What's the data?
Right. Yeah.
So here's the data that I have. Because we have a bunch of Paul Davis contractors, right, as clients of ours. And so years ago, we had trouble getting them insurance. And it was because they'd say, oh, they have exposure to mold. I cannot find one class action. Maybe, Hans, you could find one on mold. Asbestos? I couldn't even say the word mesothelioma years ago. Now I hear it every morning when I'm having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And there's law firms named the mesothelioma.
Law firm, right? No kidding.
I can't find anything on mold. So that's where I'm pushing back, and I'm going,
You won't.
You know, and I'm an educator in this industry, and I teach a class every month on mold assessment and mold remediation. And when we discuss with the students, we even show them, and within statute and the standards of practice that exist, when there's mold over 10 square feet, it's regulated here in the state of Florida. So the mold assessor has to have the $1 million in E&O, errors and emissions
Right.
insurance. The remediator does not. The reason for that is because the assessor controls that project.
Yeah.
The assessor decides on what the protocol, what the plan of action is based off of physical sampling, detailed evaluation of the mold grown over 10 square feet. It's literally 468.84 statute. So it's like that tells you right there. And you go further in the standards of practice, like you can take a moldy wallboard. People do this all the time. They take furniture that has mold on it, whatever, and they put it out on the curb or they throw it in the dumpster and that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
You know, no hazmat folks show up. OSHA's not there checking.
right.
Nobody's dumpster diving
Right.
to see if there's asbestos containing
Yeah.
material in that dump site, right? But there is with asbestos, and there is so much more regulation within asbestos as there would be in mold. So if mold wasn't regulated, I would be like, okay, well, they just obviously there's a misunderstanding. They don't understand mold. They just think it's like, oh my God, it's dangerous. You know, there's one major lawsuit in Texas that was a large lawsuit, $34 million lawsuit on it was more of a mansion that had mold growing throughout. That's why Texas specifically has mold laws. There's only 4 states. Texas is one of them, Louisiana, Florida, and I think somewhere like, New York. They have mold over 10 square feet. In Texas, it's mold over 25 square feet, and there's actually permitting involved in Texas. So, but nowhere in Texas and any other state that's regulated, even in Louisiana, after all the storms and everything, nobody was calling for these extra rates based off of what they think moldy material would look like if it was on the curb, which we see all the time. You know, the contents get flooded. All those contents end up on the curb sitting there. You're telling me that is, there's no uprising on that. People aren't going to turn into monsters. So I don't understand, and you definitely won't have a commercial on it, mesothelioma, as so much as you do. So just trying to say that in more simple terms is how I stated it. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that, and it's a move or a play. But my folks in the Restoration Association of Florida, I think I'd speak for them when I say that it's already tough for us to get insurance right now anyways, as a service provider, as somebody working in this field.
Right.
And so you make it more difficult by changing the class code. And, because some people are going to PEOs just because to avoid getting coverage on their own because they can't find it. So then they go through a PEO that would accept them maybe as a mold remediation, but that is so much more expensive as well.
It is, but we'll talk about that next. But if starting in NCCI's in Florida, so they're down in Boca, this is not just going to be a Florida issue. It's going to be all across the country, wherever NCCI is, wherever they regulate these states. So now, so here's where we are with this. So I'm talking we had a Teams call, these 2 ladies. And so I'm pushing back on it. I go, it's everything you just said. And so my question to them was, how come you don't go to the actuaries and say we got to build a rate, right? So now let's take these claims that are where they have mold exposure, and they take those and they start to build a rate versus throwing it into an asbestos abatement. Yeah. Here's the response. The response is, Duke.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's hard.
You want us to take this back to our actuaries? You know what they're going to say? So I go, okay. So I get it now. So the actuaries are the bullies in the room, right? So you're intimidated. It's kind of like the chef that intimidates the wait staff. Nobody wants to complain because the chef's going to scream at them. So it's that. So as soon as I know that this is going on. So immediately, and I sent you a copy of what I sent to the insurance commissioner about we have to stop this. It's not yet proposed. They're getting ready. So it's there. They're getting ready to propose it, but I want to get ahead of it. So I looked up Richie. I found him on LinkedIn. That's how I tracked him down. Sent him a message. So he calls me at, you guys already know if you call me at 7:00 at night, I've already got like 2 good martinis in me. So I just agree with everything you say, right? But anyway, so now I've got at least a little traction. And I want to, if you don't mind, can I read a couple of things? So I've got a little,
go for it.
So now I've got a regulator. This is what kills me.
And this is the new OIR director that you were first emailing.
Yeah,
with.
he's been there for several years, but yeah, it's a new one.
Time flies.
Oh.
Here's the deal, man. I swear, it takes a week to get a response, right? I'm not going to trash them because they're helping me. But I swear, if I waited a week to respond back to you as a client,
Right.
yeah, I wouldn't be your guy anymore, right? So they pushed it to this guy. So I'm going to run a couple questions by you, and I want your audience to hear this too. So obviously they haven't received the filing yet, but they want to know, provide the number of employers who will be affected in Florida if this goes into effect. I'll make sure you get all these, so maybe you can backfill this for me,
Sure.
I can help.
I mean, it could be a record request to DBPR. I mean, I think license numbers are in the 4,000s for remediators in the state of Florida.
Okay.
So maybe 4,000 or 5,000 remediators, and maybe same amount of roundabout for mold assessors. So those folks would definitely be affected, and assessors would be because they build the remediation project, and so therefore they would then have to fit in this class code. So my company, Air Quality Assessors, would also have to fit in that class code as well too. So that would not be bueno for me.
So the assessors. So a lot of these just one person companies. Is that possible?
Yeah, a lot of them are.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys can be exempt from workers' comp.
Sure.
So it's not like they could.
Sure.
And they may opt to do that. You know what I mean? Because of the cost.
Sure.
They may be covered now, because it's inexpensive, but they may opt to go uncovered.
But then a remediation company says, hey, I need you to come on the site. By the way, you also need to produce your insurance.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, now you're in trouble. Now you're just stuck back to residential homes. So then that kind of cuts out the commercial market. And so obviously I have all those insurances in place, and they're already skyrocketed, and I have to negotiate with my PEOs all the time to get the best pricing. And I can imagine if it went to a higher scale, that's crazy.
The thing about it is, they're not even pushing back. They're just taking the easy way out, right?
Right. It's a lot easier just to accept rather than building a new class code, or just, I don't understand why they don't leave it where it is. Whose feathers got ruffled to say,
Can anybody
hey.
see my fingers right now? It's this. They're rubbing their fingers together. And
the carriers rubbing their fingers together. Is it simply because there's been an actual incident, an uptick in comp incidents?
I have got, in all 30 years I've been in business, I've got one right now. One. And the company's in Orlando, right? Timeshare. And it was one of their facilities in South Florida. And this guy that filed the claim, right? We found out the guy's one of these habitual claimants. So it's always been something. Wherever he worked, there was always something. So we're in the middle of helping our client with it. But here, I want to give you another example of when you go, this just sounds ridiculous. That's what you're saying to me. Dude, it doesn't even sound right. This is in 19, I want to say. So NCCI is calling me. So here's what we're going to do. So have you ever taken your car to the shop and say, look, I want an oil change, right? So you take it to your dealer. So the person behind that counter in that cubicle is a service writer, white shirt, and they don't even know where the oil filter is, right? So NCCI says, we're going to take and put this person in the mechanic code. So they would typically be a clerical or a salesperson.
Right.
That rate's
right
between 11 cents and 20 cents, right?
Right.
Based on payroll. So I'm saying, no, why are you doing that? The guy doesn't know where the oil filter is. So their response, there's two of them that I have these conversations with. I go, why? So their answer is they have the exposure. So they walk through the shop and they have exposure. Something happens. So my response is, so does the owner. Doesn't make him a mechanic, does it? He probably walks through there more than the service writer does.
Right.
And so it gets up, nobody's got to push back on that, right? So I'm saying this person needs to stay here. And so I bring this up. I go, you can take a roofer. He's got a salesperson. That roofer climbs on the roof. There's damages. And says, okay, this is what needs to be done. And he's still a salesperson. And they go, not for long. So what I like about that is I know first. So any changes that they're talking about doing now, they're not going to go into effect. And first they got to get through. And Florida's got to accept it. Other states could take it on, right? And say, okay, we'll do it. So in the case of the roofers, it hasn't changed that. They're still sales. So, but I want to make sure I get ahead of it. And that's why I got you hooked to my hip to help me with this.
Yeah.
And so, but it's that kind of, it just seems ridiculous, right? Why are you guys doing it? It's when you say it's not fair, that's not a good argument. You know that, Hans, as an attorney.
I do.
Fair doesn't count.
Yeah, but usually there's a reason, there's an event, there's a cause that there's an action over, right? I mean, what did the insurance companies want to do, right? So they can make major law change, create a crisis, right? So if there wasn't a crisis, they wouldn't have been able to push through all of those bills. We all knew what was happening. We all knew what was going on, but OIR, with David Altmaier at the helm prior to, that fraud, he then started the dumpster fire by allowing all of these crazy rates that nobody's ever heard of, these types of rates. I mean, 50, 60, 80%, in some cases 100%. Tower Hill being quoted on, we only filed for a small amount. They ended up giving him like 50 or over 50% increase. It's like all of these stories to create this crazy rate hike.
You're talking about liability
crisis.
Insurance now, right?
Well, I was talking about property insurance.
Property insurance, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I got you.
And we've been talking about workers' comp. Now, it's just another part of us feeling the pinch, right? I mean, of insurance in all realms going up and finding a reason why. And in this case, they were like, let's create a crisis so we can start the dumpster fire so we can then come to a special session and make all these crazy law changes on behalf of the insurance lobby, which then gave Ron DeSantis $100 million to run for president, which he then lost. And then he spent a little bit too much money. I think he's in the pooper for that too now. But anyways, so we've seen this type of stuff in property. Now we're seeing it, and it's always been there in workers' comp. I mean, what did it take, Hans? About 13 years for them to change the attorney fee law in workers' comp?
Yeah. Well, once comp was determined, the fees were deemed to be unconstitutional. It was 12 years.
It was 2004 when that happened.
Right.
In 17 is when they flipped it.
Ended up taking that much time just to turn that around. I did look up. I always remember on Yellowstone, John Dutton had a definition of fairness, which I thought was really
I'd like to hear it.
Fair means one side got exactly what they wanted in a way that the other side can't complain about. There's no such thing as fair.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's a good line.
So there's insurance is saying we want new classifications that cost more money. Well, what can we really say about that?
So okay, now let me paint a different picture. So the rates have rolled back 70-something%, right? In the last for workers' comp, you've never seen the rate system.
Well, where'd they start? That's my first question. I mean,
so this is 20 years ago. A roofer paid $54 for every $100 of payroll. Today they're $8.
Holy cow.
Today they're $8.
$4.
Oh yeah.
What in the hell?
Steel erector. I'll give you one. Steel erection. There's two codes for steel erection. One rate if you're under 2 stories, and one rate when you're over 2 stories. Steel erection. So which would you think is the highest rate if they're working under 2 stories or over 2 stories?
Over.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, it's half the price.
Because there's fewer of those buildings, there's more incidents of people getting injured.
No, when you fall and you're 6 floors up,
you die.
You're dead.
Oh, yeah.
You
live.
Yeah.
It's when you're under 2 stories. That rate used to be $99 for every $100 of payroll. Wow. And now it's a lot cheaper. And the other rate used to be 50-something bucks. So you'd be surprised how many clients.
That's a high rate.
Now here's interesting. This is a great success story for our company. So we had a client at the time, called us and said, look, we just got whacked with a massive audit. We owe all this money. We build churches, right? And the steel that they said, church is 1 story, right? Well, it says in the scopes manual, when you read it, it says over 2 stories is 32 feet. Guess what I added? The steeple. Huh?
The
steeple on the top. I went back, got them all the money back.
Oh my gosh.
Because there's not, it says over 32 feet. That's over 32 feet. How are you going to argue with that?
Right. You can't. I mean, it's sacrilegious.
Yeah. I've done some nasty stuff like that. But you're not going to win. You're not going to win it with me. Let me put it that way. Right?
Definitely not.
I always say you're a lightweight showing up to a heavyweight fight, and I'm a heavyweight, right?
That's right.
So it
right,
is.
Well, we're gonna take a break here in about 10 seconds.
Okay, good.
So if you like what you heard, check us out. If you missed the beginning of it, we'll be on Spotify in a few days. We'll be on YouTube in a few days. Check us out, contractortalkpodcast.com. We're going to take a break, give some thanks to our sponsors. We'll be right back. All right. We're back live on Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell, 94.9 FM, 950 on the AM dial. The Answer here local in Central Florida. Every Monday night, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Record here in the studio. Check us out on our YouTube page, Contractor Talk Podcast there, and also on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you stream. In a few days, we'll be there for you to stream and check out the entire show. We have Duke today. Some great conversation about the workers' compensation insurance for service providers is what we're all about, especially specifically in the contracting world. You peel it back in the mold remediation world. You know, we all kind of overlap in this industry, and you're talking about some crazy rate increases for the business owners of these types of establishments.
And it's not just to the business owner. Obviously, that all goes back to the consumer, right? At some point. It always comes back out of our pocket. Right,
and it has to. And I was just thinking about, if I'm a contractor on a job and there's mold, then I sub out a mold remediator. I mean, at some point, you know, your rates are going to increase as well, too, due to my exposure now of that potential mesothelioma in the back of every agent's head whenever they say the word asbestos. And so it's such a scary word, and it brings a lot of magnitude behind it. So I definitely don't think it's fair. I'll use your line there, Hans. And it's definitely not fair to the business owners who are already feeling the pinch. Right. We had major law changes that really have greatly affected contractors here in the state of Florida and gave the insurance providers on the property side a lot more leeway to slow walk claims and such. I mean, some of the headlines I saw last week were of insurance companies getting fined for slow walking claims. Right. And, just as I believe it was FedNat or Frontline, whatever, they're both horrible. But they were in Louisiana, and they were fined there a big amount for slow walking claims. I said, they're doing their stuff in Louisiana as they were doing in Florida, and Louisiana wasn't having it. They quickly fined them. That's just their attitude here in the state of Florida, Hans, as you know, because the only recourse is to file suit against them. And that's where you come in to help then collect the fees that should have already been paid to them in the beginning. So how would that then look at what are your thoughts then anyways, Hans, as it affects not only the business owners in this industries, but I think everybody else alike. Like you said, I think we're all going to feel the pinch.
Well, I mean, whenever you see an increase such as that, you're talking 20%. You're talking about raising rates on a per person basis.
Maybe even 3 times the amount. I don't know what rates are now, but 3 times the amount of
the classification. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it all trickles back to the consumer. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you cut it, at some point costs go up enough. The owner will try to potentially eat some of that cost initially to try to make sure he doesn't lose his market share. But if a rising tide raises all boats, and everyone's going to have to charge more, and then everyone charges more, and then what we usually find, it doesn't usually go back down. Right. Once you've conditioned the populace to accept the price, there's little incentive to bring it back down again unless the market brings it back down. Right. So I mean, from my perspective, and what I find interesting too is every week on this show, someone will come in and I'll go, work comp, probably not much for me to learn today. And I'm fascinated. I'm like, oh my God, I got to talk to Duke after the show because I'm going to need some comp coverage. And all of a sudden, every week I have business cards for everyone who's been on the show. I'm always like, drywall guy. Oh, I got a drywall guy. A comp guy. And I got a comp guy. I got a plumber. We got everybody, man. That's one thing I always find about this show is that I learn something every week. Like not a week goes by where I don't go, I did not know that. And I've learned a lot today about comp already. I'm concerned about the roofing aspect, the fact they're going to make those guys from salesmen to roofers and all those other changes of classification. And as usual, everything we talk about for the last 5-6 years we've been doing this is all about what is the insurer going to do next when you think there's nothing else they could do to you. When you finally stop and go, I think we're done.
There are no more angles left.
It's around. We went from a diamond to a ball, and they rubbed all the facets off. Yet still we're here talking about yet another way to make things cost more and have the consumer spend more and have really have no ability to contest that.
Right.
Can I share something that's going to scare you way more than going into the asbestos abatement code? So this started about 4 or 5 years ago. So I've done workers' comp forever. That's it. Just And so our daughter came to us and said, we need to start doing other lines of coverage, right? So I'm like this. I give her the old air quote. It's called Work Comp Solutions, right? Get it? You know?
Right,
She goes,
right.
I can fix that quick. If you go to my website, it says WCS, right? So it's that. And so I go, so reach out to our clients, right? And just see if they have any interest, and then let's see if there's some traction. So she reached out to a bunch of clients, and they said, well, if you do other lines of coverage like you do workers' comp, because we look more like a forensic accounting firm than we do the insurance business.
You could be like Flo. You can bundle.
I could bundle. Yeah. That's kind of, Well, my mom thinks I'm a bookkeeper because I'm too embarrassed to tell her I'm in the insurance business, right? So anyway, so we get a big response back. If you can do it as well as you do workers' comp, but when you do one, it's like being an attorney. When you do one thing all the time, you get really, really good at it. Right? You've seen the majority of stuff. So she said they're interested. And I go, yeah, but we're not that good. Do I have a license? Yeah, I used to sell everything a long time ago, right? I was that guy.
Right.
You know, whatever you need pet insurance, I can do it. You know, whatever. I bail bonds. I got a bunch of clients that need that. Right? So anyway, so I happen to know of this young guy. His name is Drew Boyd. He's up in Gainesville. He's not an insurance agent. He's a policy analyst. So here's what we did. So clients, I said, you send me your policies. I mean, the whole 90 pages of your general liability policy, your umbrella policy, your auto policy, all of this stuff. I send it up to Drew and I go, I need you to look for gaps and exclusions. And this is this is the first one we did, AC and plumbing contractor in Tampa. So I'm expecting whatever, who knows. He comes back with, not only did he give me the examples, he gave what's excluded and where there's gaps in coverage and examples. Now, cause I do a lot of speaking engagements with these contractors because I do them for CE credits. And I make this statement, the world has changed around you, my friends, and you haven't even noticed it. And here's what I'm saying. Insurance companies are taking away coverages. When you get a renewal, it could be with the same carrier, they're excluding stuff. Insurance agents are not reading policies.
I agree.
They're under a lot of pressure. Let's sell this. Or they want to be the cheapest, right?
Right.
Well, here's how you get to be the cheapest.
Dude, we tell that same story for years now. We always say, I was telling it when I go to mediation with citizens, there's one guy who always wants to tell my client how much coverage they have. And I go, and Mr. Smith, you have $520,000 worth of coverage. I said, yeah, but they can't get to it.
Right.
Unless if the house burns to the ground, maybe under valued policy law, maybe they pay you that coverage A amount. Odds are they still won't do that. I said, so don't tell them the coverage amount because there's limitations and exclusions. We tell our listeners, look, don't look at the front page. Say to your agent, what does it now not cover? What's been excluded?
Right.
Or worse, what's been now covered but limited?
Right.
Great advice, but let me tell you this. They don't know. They're not looking at it. And I got to tell you, and the contractors, when they get the proposal, they go to the last page and say, what does this compare to last year?
Right.
And a lot of them aren't even putting it out to market. Here's the example. AC, Brian is the client. We've done workers' comp forever, right? He said, Duke, look at it. He's with one of the largest agencies in the country. Big. And the guy's a buddy of his. So we do the whole review. I sit down with Brian. I go, Brian, the good news is you do residential work? He goes, yeah, absolutely. I go, you're covered. I go, you work in condos? He goes, yeah, of course. No coverage. Apartment complexes? No coverage. Mixed-use buildings? No coverage. So in other words, you're on the 6th floor of a condo, right?
Oh, man.
And your guy's putting the new ice maker in, doesn't tighten the water line up. Drip, drip, all the way down. No coverage.
Wait,
Sorry.
but that would be more of a general liability coverage?
That's general liability. That's what I'm talking about.
All right.
He never knew he didn't have it.
Right.
So
Holy
as business owners, I have this conversation.
Because you look at all of his insurance. You do his work comp. You're like, give me everything.
And now we're doing everything.
Oh, my.
But we're starting with policy analysis, gaps, and exclusions. And I'm absolutely floored. And look, it's one thing if you were to say to me, yeah, I knew that wasn't covered. I'll self-insure it. Right. But when you don't know, you got a contractor, somebody's getting their ass kicked in the parking lot.
Right.
They're ticked over that stuff because most of these business owners, they spend their life, with their, you got to protect wealth and reputation at almost all cost. And what can damage that? Well, you start having these claims. This is what happens. And carriers are taking it away. Here we got one. We just did it up in New Jersey. tree trimming company. They came to us. They got referred to us. And their experience mod, that's a multiplier. So they're paying double the cost of workers' comp. And they're in the assigned risk, and it's costing them another $100,000. So they come to us. Their agent couldn't do anything. That's where they were going to end up. So we ended up getting them out of the assigned risk pool, right? So we saved them the $100,000. And they said, Duke, look at the rest of our stuff. Now we have no faith in our current guy. They did tree trimming and they did excavation. Excavation, there was excluded earth movement. The policy did. I go, did anybody happen to read this? Now, earth movement's not a dozer that's moving earth.
Right.
It's a shovel. You can have a shovel. And they had no idea. They're like, same thing. So I just say this. It's not a bad idea. And that's what we do. Somebody goes, look, you want to quote it? I go, no, you send me everything first. So we do this whole gap analysis, and we also do premium recovery. And so I've been doing that for a long time. If you look at my website, you can see. And that's where we just go in strictly on a contract.
Yeah, well, that's a good opportunity before the break for you to tell us, how do we get a hold of you? Give us your website, email address, phone number. How do we get a hold of you?
So WorkCompSolutionsFL.com is my website. Quite honestly, if you find me on LinkedIn, just about if you put Work Comp Solutions in, it's going to come up. So
Very good.
we have a lot of social media presence, and I post a lot of stuff. So, but the whole premium recovery side is, let us look at everything, and if we get you money back, we split it. We divvy it up. And
is that part of the audit? Like you basically,
it's everything.
You audit or like reverse audit type stuff, whatever.
I do. I can go back. See, the money comes from because I can go back 3 years.
Okay.
So if there's stuff you've been misclassified on the liability side,
right,
I can go back. Workers' comp.
Now, it's interesting because I was going to ask you this before. Now, how long do you go back and look? Do you look at 3 years worth of claim filings, and then after that it falls off, or do you have to? Or do you consider more than 3?
Yeah, I do look at claims. I look at experience mods. I look at classifications. There's so many moving parts on the workers' comp side and the reason I can go back 3 years because if they looked at their policies, it says the carrier can go back 3 years if they believe something was misrepresented or the wrong. So they can go back and charge you. So that gives us the right. And
nice.
I mean, I've got enough stuff on my website. This has been a couple of years ago. We got a PEO, leasing company.
Well, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll pick right back up where we left off. WorkCompSolutions.com. We'll be right back. Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell. Perfect. All right. Okay. We are back. 94.9 FM, 950 on the AM dial. The Answer here every Monday night, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell. We do it live here on air, and then we are in podcast mode in a few days after. We'll be on Spotify, iTunes. Check us out on YouTube. Contractor Talk with Richie Kidwell. Such a great show for you today. We're talking insurance. A lot of times, Hans and I, when we talk about insurance, we complain about the horrible home insurance market and the racket that that we've seen in at the OIR, the Office of Insurance Regulation, who was supposed to be the consumer-friendly place that then keeps insurance companies accountable. And we've seen that, and what we know from our experience is that they are not. As a matter of fact, they are the exact opposite, and we've seen that happen with the fake crisis in 21, 22, and the major law changes at the end of 2022 that greatly affected the way that we, I guess, the way that you, Hans, litigate claims, and the way that us consumers then have to use our own indemnity. If the insurer is wrong, we have to use our indemnity to pay fees and costs. But it's never been like that, at least since 1893 or whatever it was, since the Florida Supreme Court case law, basically the David versus Goliath statute that says if the insurer was found to be wrong, they owe you the full amount of the indemnity, which is what you should have gotten before, right? Plus the attorney's fees and costs are paid by the insurance company for being wrong. It's like a penalty for then, giving this. Now
it's fairness.
Right.
Well,
right.
I mean, from that, I was talking about fair tonight. I mean, what the law used to say until December 16th of 2022, was that if the insurer didn't have to be wrongful, just got it wrong, right? It doesn't require bad faith or bad intent, but if they simply got it wrong, they had to pay you the benefits they should have paid you in the first place, plus my fees and my costs, because otherwise you don't put the insured back in their pre-loss condition, back to where they were before. If they're paying me a third or 40% of what they get for something that they need to do to their home to protect it, to beautify it, to put it back to how it was, they're not going back into their pocket. So the insurer actually, there's no penalty, and that's currently to the insurer being wrong.
Right. Now there's a penalty from the consumer now, because now we have to pay your fees and costs just to get what we should have gotten in the beginning.
Yeah, and the insurer's worst day is all they got to do is pay the claim they should have paid, and instead they gain the benefit of the time value of money, of, as we always talk about, to deny and to delay and deny and then defend as need be.
That's right.
So,
and unfortunately, we talk mostly about home insurance and that market, but really what happened in the law changes, what maybe people won't understand, is that it started with property, and then the very next session in the beginning, 2023, he hammered out all lines of insurance. So whether it's auto, whether it's life, can you imagine, and medical. So can you imagine if like your spouse died and you had all this coverage, and as sad as it's going through, you lost a kid or something like that, and then your insurer denies paying you, and then I have to hire an attorney, add insult to injury, I have to pay for that.
And a lot of times the life insurance benefits, really, sometimes people think of them as some sort of bonus money. Typically, they're just to cover the losses. They're really there to help the family survive, maintain the home they had. Again, it's all about trying to maintain the status quo. Can we put the insured back to where they were, without the person, unfortunately, but with the financial means to live how they used to live? So the idea is, if you have $1 million policy or $500,000 policy, and you pay me a percentage to recover what should have been paid in the first place, what that means is you still may have to live at a lesser level because of the change in statute. And that, as we all say, would be unfair. Now, what it was presented as, it's unfair that the insurer should have to pay Mr. Kennon's fees and costs for some reason.
Right.
Because that's not fair to the insurance company, and that's driving them out of the market, which we all know is not true based on everything else that happened in November of last year, when the secret report was revealed that said they were all lying about the money they spent, and they actually were sending money out to third-party companies in order to raise their cost in order to get premium increases. We saw that unfold, and all that happened this last session was nothing happened that provided the consumer any relief. We haven't seen a bill, well, I can't remember the last one, certainly on the property side, that has ever provided premium reduction. Right, we say the words all the time. Just give me one bill that says, hey, if you guys do X, we got to reduce your premium. Hasn't happened, and imagine won't happen yet.
Right. And now we're starting to see that, maybe because of the influx, and there's been a lot of fight about this in the Florida legislature. We just had the session and the regular session for the state of Florida, and the Speaker of the House was really pushing for insurance reform, civil litigation reform, so the consumer has more of a standing foot against the insurance company, and that effort failed. Even
in the Senate, failed in the Senate.
It did. It went through the entire distance in the House. They pushed it through. They even put it in a bill that was about phosphate mining at the end, a strategy, because it was such a big bill for the Senate, and still they allowed it to die just because they didn't want the insurance stuff, or like it was called out by President Trump's camp, is that DeSantis still has lackeys in the Senate, and what they're referring to was the past Senate President Pasadomo being the Rules Committee chair, right? And so, since she's the chairwoman, she decides what goes through and what doesn't go through. So she can say, there's no such insurance bill that's going to go through my committee. That puts a stop on everything. Then that means the insurance and banking and judiciary isn't going to push it through, because it usually gets referred to 3 committees. It usually goes through insurance and banking, judiciary, and then rules, and then it goes to the floor. And so we saw that being halted just by the previous Senate president then speaking, and she was loud about it as well. That's why she got called out. So anyway, but nothing still happened, and it died before it was even had a chance to be heard on the Senate floor. So anyway, and then now we start to, and then the focus changes, right? Then we meet Duke, and we find that now we're looking at maybe influxing other industries that may have been previously unaffected. But hey, if they can't get it one way, get it another, right? By increasing premiums on service providers that maybe not need it. But where are you with that? You reached out to the Office of Insurance Regulation in the state of Florida.
Yep.
They gave you somebody to reach out to and say, hey, talk to this person.
Yeah, that person's responded to me already.
All right.
And they've sent these questions, and I'm going to reach back out to you. I just got it in. I printed them before I came over. But so that's when I asked you about the number of employers this will affect. But I'm going to cut and paste these. I'm going to send them to you. I'm going to email them to you. I just want you to take a look at them and where you can answer them. Mm-hmm. So, but I believe we have a little bit of traction already, right? So it's not yet proposed, but I think since I've got this stuff in front of the insurance commissioner, and then this is going to go to a review board. Mm-hmm. So it's a slower process. Look, the reason they don't want to do it, they don't want to build out a rate, because it takes a long time for them to do it. So it's just like, we're just not going to do it. We'd rather just throw this into this one class code and make it work.
Isn't it easier? I'll ask the dumb question. Isn't it easier just to have it lie where it is?
You know what I think they could do? Yes. But they could do like a surcharge on that rate. And the example that I'll give you is painters and sandblasters. So they have this extra rate of like 23 cents for silica, because these guys are sandblasting, right? Typically with sand. Right. So they add that on to the painter's rate, because we have a bunch of clients that are industrial, commercial painting contractors. So they add that little bit on there. So it would be very, very limited for just the people that are coming in and doing the mold remediation. I mean, I think that's a better idea than all of a sudden, then if we have to back up, that's the idea, is to throw something like that, a minimal, just for that whenever they're exposed to it. But quite honestly, they're better prepared for mold than anybody else is, right? Yeah. They're already trained.
Right.
And quite honestly, when you look at, asbestos abatement contractors, they're never going to get mesothelioma, because somebody's identified it. Like, especially, we had a contractor in Tampa that did it. And so it's all these pipes that are wrapped with this stuff that has asbestos. They knew it. So they're already geared up for this stuff, right? Oh, yeah. It's not them that's going to get it. It's the iron worker or the pipe fitter that's working around this stuff all of his life that's going to get it.
Right.
Now, here's something real quick. Now, asbestos is a naturally forming, like silica or something that's in rocks. I think they use the term
fibrous.
Fibrous.
Yeah.
So it's in your lungs. So it's natural. So like God made it. Now, like mold in Leviticus, they talk about if there's mold in a house, you have to tear the house down.
Right. Yeah.
In the Bible, so the Bible talks about, second book of the Bible talks about it. So, or third actually, Leviticus.
Yeah. The priest used to be able to determine if it smells like mold. The whole thing has to be.
Yeah, you got to tear the whole thing down. Yeah. So wouldn't it be fair to say, well, asbestos is a naturally forming thing. It's not a man-made. It's not a man-made chemical. It's not like silicone or something. It's in rocks. It's in things like that. And mold comes from. It's a natural thing. It's a little fungi, algae. So isn't asbestos and mold more akin to each other as natural substances than janitorial, where you're using... Actually, janitorial is more dangerous. You're using Clorox and using chemicals and things like that.
Hans? Hans is down this road. We're going to reel you back in. Obviously, you're not doing mesothelioma claims, because you'd be saying it's the worst thing in the world. No. Right? But it's completely different.
Right? Yeah, I love the devil's advocacy, however you want to say it in that way. But the truth is that there's just absolutely no comparison when you're looking at the dangers of asbestos.
That's correct.
And then the way that they actually abate asbestos in a wet form, right? I mean, so the sandblasters, I can get that to where you're really putting a lot of stuff in the air. And silica is a thing that really hasn't been a thing. It's starting to become a thing. So it's interesting you guys are ahead of it.
It actually has. OSHA's has in fact, they've got a silica initiative right now. Okay. So they're pushing forward along with this.
Disney? Huh? Disney's the first one that really came out with the whole silica testing and all that. We got involved in a bunch of silica dust testing just because Disney was, and then I was like, that's going to be the next thing. I can feel it.
Well, and there's a big push toward heat illness right now too. That's with OSHA. So remember I used that term, you got to protect wealth and reputation, right? OSHA. What are the citations for OSHA are? I mean, right now, a serious violations $15,000. Willful is between 144 and 166,000. So if you're a contractor, and it could be your guys, if something happens, OSHA shows up, you're talking about serious money when they start writing citations. And
when you say heat, you mean like roofers working in August on a roof?
It's indoor. Let me tell you, here's what it is. We're all from Florida, right? Mm-hmm. At 80 degrees outside, that's when this heat illness triggers at 80, right? At 80 degrees, I'm put a sweater on. I'm freezing, right? I put a sweater on. When it gets to 90, they're now saying if this goes through at 90 degrees, this high heat, so at 90 degrees, then the employees have to get a break once an hour for 15 minutes. You're broke as a contractor.
Used to be, well, so the way it is now, it's 15 minutes every 2 hours, half hour every 4 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes. But
basically.
It goes beyond.
So those are suggestions now because we're in the state of Florida and we're coming into. We're coming into summertime. Is it something that is going to be initiated?
Look, there's going to be a hearing on June 16th, a public hearing on this on June 16th.
Wow.
Hopefully it does not go through. And let me tell you this, even for your contractors, don't think you have to have a fatality or you have to have, if somebody spends a night in the hospital, that you have to call OSHA.
Yeah, you really don't. Hey, last few seconds here, I wanted to make sure I correct your website. WorkCompSolutionsFL.com. All right, thanks for checking out the show. We'll talk to you guys next week. See you.